We're Sam and Jerry Lang, and today we're going to be talking about having heart-to-heart talks with our kids. There's a passage that relates to this. It's Proverbs 23:26, which says, "My son, give me your heart and let your eyes keep to my ways." There came a time in my life with my relationship with my son David when during his teen years we were drifting apart a bit, and I had a talk with my wife Jerry, and she said, "I think you just need to have a good heart-to-heart talk with your son." And so I went back out on the deck with David, and I poured my heart out to him. I actually read him this verse, and I said, "Son, I feel like we're just not as close as we used to be when you were growing up, and I don't want to see that happen." And I got teared up and shared my heart with him, and he got teared up and said, "Dad, I've been feeling the same thing." And we just made a promise to each other that we were going to be close on a heart level and begin to talk more on a heart level. I think for us parents, talking heart to heart is one of the most important things we ever learn how to do. Because then we move away from just trying to manage our kids' behavior, and we get into the realm of really shaping their character and building a relationship with our children. And so Jerry's going to talk, though, about sometimes there are kids that are easier to talk to, and there's some that are more difficult to talk to as parents, and she's going to share her thoughts on that.
There's a great scripture in Proverbs 20, verse 5. It says, "The purpose of a man's heart are deep waters, but a man of understanding draws them out." A parent has to be a man or a woman of great understanding to really raise our children and to have these kind of talks with our children. As Sam talked about with David, some of our children are quieter, they're more reserved, they're a little more difficult to draw them out and to hear the things that are on their minds and on their hearts. Others of our children talk a lot. Sometimes, though, they talk a lot, but you still don't really know the things that they're feeling, their worries, their cares. One of our children, Alexandra, our youngest, is our talker. She would talk a lot from the time she was a young girl. She still can really talk, and she's actually very good at expressing the things that are on her mind. The problem that I had in our relating, especially as she became a teenager, is I began to quickly, I would grow tired of hearing her talk for too long, and I would quickly begin to talk at her, and I would begin to give advice. And I remember as a teenager her trying to tell me something, and she could see the look on my face as I began to bring up the words of advice for her. And she said, "Mom, stop. Just let me tell you how I feel first." I had to learn with Alexandra not to talk at her, but to really listen and talk to her.
Let me have a word to the fathers. I think that some of our greatest problems is that we come home from work and we've had a lot on our mind. We're tired, we're weary. We come into a house with a wife and kids, and often we just want to not say a word. We want to check out, and we become very distracted, or we bring our worries and anxieties home. I know I did this. Being a minister, I would have a lot on my mind. And oftentimes Jerry would lean over to me during dinner and say, you're not really here. And I had to hear that and realize I needed to detach my mind from whatever it was that might be legitimately concerning me, but I was somewhere else. I was with my family, and I really needed to be there. So men, let's work on the old distraction problem. I think the other thing, men, it might help us to do is to actually set a time as our kids get older to spend time talking to them. That may not work in some cases, but for me it did, because it took away the intimidation factor of, "Oh, Dad wants to have a talk with me tomorrow." Instead, it was, "Oh, Dad and I always get together on Tuesday, and we go to the coffee shop, or we go out in the backyard and kick the soccer ball, or we're going to do something together." It really did help to set some times for me as kids got older.
Setting times is very important with our children, but sometimes you just have to catch the moments. Find the time when they're most likely to talk. A lot of children will open up and tell you everything at bedtime. We played a game when the children were young at bedtime called The Best and the Worst. They would tell me the best thing that happened that day and the worst thing that happened that day. You find out a lot at bedtime. Other times, when they come home from school, often that's the time that, if possible, we need to be there because they tell us the things that happened. Riding in the car, when it's not intense, they're not looking at you eye to eye. often they would begin to talk then. When I was cooking dinner, they'd mosey down and begin to talk. When I wasn't staring them in the face, they'd tell me the things that were on their mind. The boys often, especially, needed to play first. Then they'd sit down and begin to talk. Find the moments when your children will tell you the things that are most on their minds.
I took my daughter Alexandra to school every Friday morning in the middle school, and we stopped and got a bagel. And I found out later she actually dressed up and looked a little bit nicer because she wanted to be with her daddy on that day. But we have some very precious memories about just going to school and talking, and she opened up. We didn't call it anything, it was just some time to be together, and it really worked out great. Let me close out by just giving you 4 questions that you can ask that might help draw your children out. First is, oh, and then what happened? And let them keep going. There may be more information. And how did you feel about that? You want to get not just the facts, but also the feelings involved. And what do you think about this? Particularly for teens, what do they really think about that? And you may hear an opinion that you need to talk about. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever. And then help me understand about that. Rather than just telling them what we think, let's help them explain it more so we understand. We'll find then that as they open up, tell us what's on their mind, we can really have heart-to-heart talks. It means we need to let our heart out too, though, and it's not all them telling us one way what they feel, it's us speaking on a heart-to-heart level. And as they get older, it becomes more and more important.